Hello YouTube and welcome back to UK Highland Photography. I'm Strober and today we're going to be talking about some of the tips what I have found when it comes to working as a nightclub photographer. Now the first tip I want to share with you guys is the size of your photographs. Let me explain this. This is an event printer. Now, the way event printers work is you will take your SD card and you will plug it into one of these. Now, these will load your photographs into its memory. And this is where the size of the photographs matter. Let's say you've taken 365 photographs during your event. What that means is that this event printer has to load 365 of your photographs into its memory bank. Now, if the photographs are massive, you could be waiting there for about 10 minutes. However, if you keep your photographs small, you will be waiting for like 2 minutes. And this is exactly what I do when I shoot photographs in nightclubs. I keep my photographs to a medium size and I do not shoot on large size photographs. Right, so staying with printing for a minute, let's move on to my next tip. My next tip is don't use scissors. If you're selling photographs, don't use scissors to cut out your photographs, whether it be key rings or be prints, etc. The reason being is because customers don't want to wait for you to be messing about with your little scissors in order to cut images. Instead, invest in a trimmer. Trimmers are not that expensive. You can pick them up for about £15 and they make your work so much faster, particularly when you're working with bulk photographs. So again, don't be cheap and don't try running a nightclub business on scissors because it's just daft, okay? So that's that little rant over. My next tip is keep everything tidy. When you work in nightclubs, okay, the last thing you want is people putting complaints in against you about being a messy photographer. For example, you don't want people saying, oh, who owns all this rubbish? And then people saying, oh, it's that photographer. Instead, you want to work very tidily. Very tidy, and this means bring a bag with you. Bring a plastic bag with you, because if you bring a plastic bag with you, then you can put your own scrap paper into your bag and take it away with you. Because I've actually been in nightclubs where there is nowhere for you to put your rubbish, and I've learned that if I take a plastic bag, then I can put the rubbish in my own bag and then take it away, and nobody can complain about me being a messy photographer. Okay guys? So let's move on to the next tip. My next tip is when you're working in nightclubs, find photographic backgrounds and find areas of the club where it's nice ambient light. Let me explain this. When you take photographs in the nightclub, they may not always turn out to be the way you want them to be. But there's some areas of a nightclub where you can guarantee the photographs will consistently come out looking perfect. Now it's these consistent areas of the nightclub which you should be looking for. Let me give you an example. I have an area called the Wall of Fame. Now the Wall of Fame is basically a wall in a nightclub, but it always gives me consistent shots. So if I take photographs of people and they're not coming out the way I want them to, and they're like, oh, that's crap, then I'm like, well, come with me to the Wall of Fame. And I simply place them in front of the Wall of Fame and I take a photograph because I know it's consistently going to be a good photograph of the people in question, and it always is. And there's other areas where I look for areas such as where there's ambient light in the background. For example, have a look at this photograph. You see the ambient light there in the background? Now that's another technique which I do, because I know that area of the nightclub is always lit up on the walls like this, whether it's pink or whether it's blue or green or whatever. Then I always place subjects in front of that background, simply because I know it's going to give me good looking photographs. So there you go, look out for ambient backgrounds in addition to backdrops that you could use. In my case, it is a wall. Now, my next tip is delete the bad photographs. You heard that correctly. As soon as you see a bad photograph, delete it. It's of no use to you, it's of no use to the club, it's of no use to your subject. So do yourself a favour, just delete it, because there's nothing worse when you get home from doing a shift in the nightclub in order to find out that you've now got to go through your editing program and press delete, 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 and just, quite frankly, it wastes your time. You're going to save so much time if you delete your bad photos as you go along. So let's move on to the next point. When you're working in nightclubs, you're going to come across glass everywhere. Now, here in the United Kingdom, when you go to work, you have a responsibility under health and safety. You have a responsibility to yourself and you have a responsibility to others. So therefore, if you see glass on the dance floor, do yourself a favour and probably somebody else a favour. Just bend down, pick it up and put it on the side. Now you know nobody's going to be glassed. Nobody's going to slip on it and break their arm and stuff like that. Again, just pick up glass. It does everybody a favour in the long run. So them little favours go a long way. I know you know what I mean, guys. So yeah, just pick up glass if you're working about, if you work in the dance floors. Now, the next thing is how to deal with photo bombers. Now, photo bombers are basically people who have no connection with the group it is that you're photographing whatsoever. So this can be problematic if you're trying to sell photographs, because would you want to buy a photograph that includes someone who you just do not know? You don't want to buy a photograph, do you? So as a photographer, when you see photo bombers, then you've got to make a decision as to how you deal with that photo bomber. Now, there's two techniques I do, and the first one is that I will simply turn around to the photo bomber and I'll say, excuse me, oh, come on, don't begin the photograph. They don't want you in the photograph. And I will tell them straight. I will basically say to them, look, I'm photographing these guys. I don't want you in the photograph. These guys don't want you in the photograph, so please go on, go do your own thing. And that normally works. I know it's a very direct approach, but normally that does work. Or you can take the indirect approach. Now, what I do with the indirect approach is that I will basically see the photo bomber coming in shot. So what I'll do, I'll fire a photograph straight away. As soon as the photo bomber sees the flash go off, the photo bomber then moves off. And then what I do is I very quickly take another photograph of my two subjects. And then when I go to show my subjects the photograph, I show them the photograph that does not include the photo bomber. So you've got to learn how you're going to deal with photo bombers. Now, moving on to my very last point. My very last point is about angry people. In nightclubs, you're going to get angry people. It's like out of every 1,000 people, you're going to find that one person who is going to say something or is going to do something that's going to really try and upset you. My advice to you guys is simply don't get angry, don't start fighting. Instead, if somebody is really upsetting you, go outside, have a break, get some fresh air, take a few big deep breaths, cool down, and then go back into the nightclub and then continue with your photography. So again, don't be upset if people don't like your photographs. Remember, there's people out there, you can take the best photograph in the world, but there's people out there who will say, I don't like that. So remember guys, don't get angry because people is people. Right guys, remember to subscribe to the channel, and I've been your host Strober, and check out the online shop over at www.ukhighland.com when you get the time.